Good morning
Good morning, everyone.
on this bright, cheery, sunny morning.
It is not a good morning, Chris. Don't mislead the dear viewer. It's thrown it down around here in Beaminster. Back to the Beaminster Weather Observatory, of course. It may be good elsewhere. It's throwing it down, and my poor Lady Rowie is yet again soaked from having gone out for a walk. So she's been banned to one spot to stop her soaking everywhere else, despite my attempts at drying her. So
Well, my radio this morning said this has been the wettest February on record ever.
I know.
Well, isn't it? Yeah.
I know. And it's just mucky. I was in the cemetery up here in Beaminster doing a burial following a service in the church the other day, and I've never seen so much water just standing on the ground everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And as we all know, churchyards aren't the nicest places in any day to stand, particularly, but on wet and windy days, they're even worse.
Well, if I turn my computer around, you can see my big funeral cloak there hanging on the back of the door.
Yeah.
It'll probably take 2 days to dry out after yesterday.
Well, mine hadn't dried out from the previous Thursday when I was absolutely soaked in Broadwindsor churchyard.
Yeah.
And the bottom of my cassock is still soaking wet and covered in mud. I can't dry it quick enough to rub all the mud off it. It's awful.
So the moral of the story is, dear viewer, stop dying and give the vicars some dryness.
Pray for dryness in the churchyard. It doesn't matter if it's wet anywhere else, just make sure it doesn't rain over some churchyards and cemeteries.
Yeah.
Well, what are we doing today? We're going to make a slight change by reading something from Paul's first letter to the Christians in Corinth, aren't we?
We are. Interesting guy, Paul, isn't it? Nice to go away. We had a choice this morning, and I'm afraid we didn't go to public vote. No. We went to the majority of the three of us. The first option was the 10 Commandments, and it was, it's too dreary a day for that.
Yes, far too dreary.
Then we thought, shall we go to Jesus getting angry and turning over the tables of the money changers? And we thought, actually, what about the foolishness and wiseness of St. Paul?
Yes.
So after our
yeah.
I go from 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 18 to 25.
Please do.
For the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the discernment of the discerning I will thwart. Where is the one who is wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since in the wisdom of the world did not know God through wisdom, God decided through the foolishness of our proclamation to save those who believe. For Jews demand signs, and Greeks desire wisdom. But we proclaim Christ crucified, a stumbling block to Jews and foolishness to Gentiles. But to those who are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ the power of God and the wisdom of God. For God's foolishness is wiser than human wisdom, and God's weakness is stronger than human strength.
It's interesting. I was at, as you know, Wednesday. I was at school in Mapperton yesterday for their weekly worship with me, and we've been looking at Lent and beginning to look at Easter with them, and they'd just done the older children had just done a survey as part of their RE lesson, and the survey was on who was to blame for Jesus' death on the cross. And they had selected, as children, as the young people, 6 different people from the story. And then they had to go and asking people, and then they had to produce a pie chart, all the things we've probably seen in the past in schools, a pie chart, and ladders and all kinds of things to show who the children thought were to blame for the death of Jesus. And I thought they were going to come out with the idea that it was going to be Pilate was to blame, but he was only second on the list. And apparently it was the priests. And when I said to them, well, why did you think that? They said, because they were foolish. They didn't understand what Jesus was about. How about that, eh?
Well, in that one sentence, dear viewer, thank you for watching Rev Chat.
Ooh.
Yeah.
As priests, we're so foolish, we're going to go away.
Yeah. They are the debaters of this age, Chris, those youngsters.
You know, when I read that, the debaters of this age, I thought, that's Parliament.
Keep them out of it, please. At this precise moment, keep them out of it. But there we are. Yeah, I mean, it is a wonderful passage, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and you know, we are. You know, I've often wondered when I've read that the message of the cross is foolishness. You know, and that those children, they were actually talking about the message of the cross, and the head teacher who'd been doing this work with them, because he's teaching at the moment because they've got people off sick. He was saying, when I said to him, who do you think was to blame for the death? You know, the children will come up with this. And he said, I think it's love. That was the problem. Jesus died because he loved us so much. There wasn't anybody else to blame. It was love. And I thought that's an interesting take, isn't it? On what is the message of the cross.
Mm.
Yeah.
But I guess Jesus knew people well. I mean, you know, because he says the Jews demand signs and the Greeks desire wisdom. And then when you look in the gospel, when he's overturning the tables, the Jews said to him, what sign can you give us that you've got the authority to do this?
Yeah.
And it's, you know, I think sometimes God obviously God does know us, and but knows the ruts that we get into, the way we think. And I love in this passage from Corinthians, that last line, for God's foolishness is wiser than human wisdom, and God's weakness is stronger than human strength.
Yeah.
It's just everything is all the things that we think, you know, all our rev chatting that we do when we're so earnest. You know, God's probably thinking, oh gosh, she's not saying that old chestnut again, is she? You know, break out of the box. Sometimes we need to break out of the box, don't we?
We do. Yeah, we do. We do. And of course, the Greeks were well known for their wisdom, weren't they? Yeah, so Jesus knew, again, as you say, he knew exactly what he was saying. You know, he was pointing at different groups. You know, they were well known for their wisdom.
Yeah.
And of course, you stick by the word of the rule. And if it's not in the rule, then it can't happen or shouldn't happen or whatever.
It makes me think about, I had my Lent course last night, and we're reading Tarry a While, which I'm finding a really good book.
Yeah.
And we were thinking about how often we stick in groups, not just in church, but in life, but certainly in church, we stick in groups of people that are like us. And so our old ways of seeing and thinking are always held up, and we're given the thumbs up for them because everybody around us thinks and sees in a similar way. And it's often when we meet some somebody and something different, or when our eyes are opened by something amazing, like that phrase reason that teacher said, I think it was love. I mean, that's just a new way of thinking, and we're so frightened of people making us see in different ways, but really that is what we all need. I think we do need to see in different ways, and that's when we see the strength and the wisdom of God, I think. But when we keep just going down our old rabbit runs that we often are in, I'm talking about myself, really.
No, I agree with totally what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the book has certainly brought out a lot of because we're studying tarry a while in Beaminster, or some of us, not all of us. There are two groups that are studying the diocesan group on making Jesus known, which is useful. But it's certainly the tarry a while book has certainly brought out, I think, a raw nerve, because one person said to me the other day that a lot of people were very upset. We were reading a book about black people, and that stunned me. Why? I don't know why it should, maybe, but it just shows that with the message of multiculturalism, of equality within race, etc., which isn't what the book's about, really. Not at all. The book is clearly about in the chapter we just got through, chapter 3, is clearly about how the influence of the culture, other cultures are working their way through the church. Yeah, the understanding of theology and church in this land, and I found it very interesting.
Yeah.
What are you doing, Chris? What is study wise? Are you touching on anything like that at all?
We're doing Healing and Hope by Embrace the Middle East.
Oh yeah.
So it's written by primarily actually by people in Israel, or women. It's all written by women. Most of them are in Israel, a couple of English bishops. But it's just looking actually in a broken world, how do we find God?
Yeah.
And, how is God relevant? And it's quite interesting. Where do you find God in the midst of genocide in Gaza? And it's actually I've got the third one tonight. It's a book that demands action rather than just sitting around a table coming up with nice words. It's what are you behavior you're going to go away and change this week, sort of thing, which is quite and it is a real challenge. It doesn't just let it be a sitting down discussing. Don't we feel good because we've discussed something?
And that fits in some ways into that opening first two verses, doesn't it? What is the wisdom of the wise, and how are we becoming discerning?
Yeah.
In ways that perhaps we haven't done before, which is what you were saying, Devs. It's good to be challenged with new ideas out of the box. Well, as I drove home from the school yesterday, I kept thinking about what the teacher had said to me and thought, why haven't I ever phrased it like that before, or why haven't I perhaps seen it in the eyes of and this is a man I wouldn't say no face at all, but he's not particularly a regularly practicing Christian in that sense, but obviously has got some idea, or has read something that has really opened his eyes in a different way. And why haven't we thought of that?
Well, I do it at every wedding I take. The second sentence is from 1 John 1, chapter 4.
That's right. Yeah.
God is love. Those who live in love live in God, and God lives in them.
Yeah.
Well, if our goal is to find God, then all we're doing is loving. It's a lovely phrase, and it's really appropriate for people getting married, but it's also really appropriate for all of us. And like you say, it takes us out of this mindset of God being this man sat on his big white fluffy cloud with a big long beard, pointing down, oh, who am I going to be nice to today? Or who am I not going to be nice to? Sort of thing, with his pointy finger. You know, it takes you away from that to know actually all we need to do, the more we learn to love. And then I was extending that to, you know, our Holy Communion, when we're remembering the body and blood of Jesus. You know, we consume the bread and the wine. Well, that's like the Holy Spirit and the Spirit of the risen Jesus going inside our hearts to help us fill our hearts with more love and fill us up again to keep us going for the next week.
Mm.
Yeah.
There you go. That was the sermon according to the Reverend Chris.
Yeah. But again, that passage you mentioned from the wedding service and liturgy is also one of the sentences you can use for introducing the peace. And I often do. You know, God is love. Those who live in love live in God, and God lives in them. This idea that God is love brings everything back to the message of the cross, doesn't it? You know.
Yeah. Yeah, Jesus went to the cross because he loved me, you, and all human beings.
Yeah.
But I think also the message that God is love is liberating for those who feel they're not good enough, or they're outside, they're on the margins, on the edges, because, you know, if you say that to somebody and they know that they've shown love, even just for their family, but if they've shown love in their actions, that kind of accesses God for them. I always think that's it's a good place for it to be in a wedding, because obviously it's the couple, but there's loads of people in a wedding, or when you're saying the piece, who might feel that they're really on the edges of that. And that is a very inclusive way of talking about our relationship with God, even if we don't think we've got one.
Yeah, and I remember when I first started taking weddings as a curate, Tony, my training incumbent, he always used to say at the beginning of a wedding service, and I picked it up and for a while used it. He used to say, when we get to the vows and the promises, you're all here, and those of you who are married may like to think about them and the promises you made all those years ago. Those of you who have made them and things haven't gone right, you may like to think about, you know, what God could do to help you. He said, of course, there'll be those who are absolutely convinced they're never going to make him in their time, but it'd be good for you to hear them anyway. so I thought there's something about this, recognising what God means to us and how he does interact through all aspects of our life, whether it be marriage or, you know, partnership or whatever it may be.
Mm.
Poor Greeks again. Yeah, they're gonna go telling off today.
Well,
Yeah,
I think the other good news of this, the foolishness and wisdom thing, you know, the Greeks regarded themselves as great social intellects.
They did,
and their great debating skills, and that they were the high intellects and the high ones who could discuss things. And the love of God here, or the wisdom and the foolishness of God, is about actually, it's not just for the high intellects, it's for everybody. You know, those with a very low IQ can still love Jesus. Those who don't have any common sense or have no qualifications, you know, you don't need an O level in English before you can understand that God loves you. And actually, you can have a better understanding sometimes of what it means to love people without getting confused by all the intellectual debates going on around what we do and don't include.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you remember, there was a film, it's a really old film years and years ago, a black and white film. I can't remember what it was called, but it was basically these people got shipwrecked on an island, and all the high and mighty people, they didn't have the wherewithal or the skills or the endurance to make life sort of happen, and it was quite the lowly people who became the leaders of the community, because they had the practical skills, but also the ability to keep people together and to see that we all needed to play our part and all of that stuff. It was a really British film, but I remember it as a child thinking, some people are set up in life as the ones up here, but when everything changes, then actually you see a different skill set. Because if you paid people, for their worth about how they affected the lives of others, you'd be paying nurses a lot more than you'd be paying some bankers, perhaps, because generally, I'm not saying bankers don't do anything. I'm sure they do lots of really important things, but day to day, most people rely on things that are much more about everyday life, and it could just be their neighbour.
We found that out in lockdown, didn't we?
Yeah, definitely.
Who are our key workers?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
we need our lorry drivers, we need our shops, we need our nurses and doctors.
I know.
Everybody was really, really, really highly paid.
Yeah.
Could just stay at home.
So the wisdom of the wise isn't always, the wisdom of seeing need or being there at the right time. That is a wisdom, isn't it? It's not just about having clever arguments.
Nope.
Yeah.
I guess we're the ones that make that hierarchy. Our world has made that hierarchy. We don't have to buy into it, do we?
Nope. Nope, absolutely true.
Does that put us in the useful or useless category?
Yeah, well, I think I'd be very useless.
Yeah, I know which category I fall into, Chris. So there we are.
Yeah, and me.
So no problem there. I used to say at one time, because people always say, oh, they don't go to church, or we don't get lots of beer, or whatever. And I have said to the bishop, not this new bishop, but the previous one, I don't really care who comes to church, because they come despite my efforts. I really am more concerned about those we're not seeing, who are not getting the message of the love of Christ, as perhaps we need to get it. And somebody said that's a useless statement to make. And I thought, well, it probably is, except I'm still concerned of who we're reaching and who are getting the message of the love of Christ too.
Yeah.
And just how important. Yeah, I think it's important.
Isn't that commonly phrased as the Church of England exists for the benefit of its non-members?
Yeah, of course it is, Chris. But yeah, I think the message isn't heard by those who are regular members. They think it just exists for them, don't they?
Mm.
And I guess that's because they're doing all the work that keeps it going and providing the fire and all that. I understand all of that. But it is about how do we reach out with the message that God is love.
Yeah.
Because if we don't, then the message is foolishness, because we're not getting it across.
Mm. And I do think a lot of people in church are concerned with that too. I do feel like I work alongside people in church. In fact, I don't know what I'd do without them, because they do so much. But not just not all. I mean, there's far too many onerous sort of structural jobs, but actually being in the community, and I think it's good if we can see it as our job together.
Absolutely. Yeah, there we are. Well, dear viewer, we hope that that's helped in some way. That's the aim of Rev Chat, is to try and find some words that perhaps help deeper understanding or hope or recognising God's love. And despite the weather and perhaps that we feel some days, the message is still good.
And God still loves you.
God still loves you. And you, Chris, and you, Debs, we mustn't forget that He loves us too, despite our foolishness, because we're not Greek.
Yeah. And you, David.
Well, yeah.
Don't start
There's
that.
a limit, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've known, to be honest, I've always known that God loves me. He must have done. And I'm just grateful for a forgiving God at times, as well as a loving God.
Yeah, definitely. Oh gosh, yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm glad for that. But yes, there we are. Well, lots of food for thought for me from today's discussion. Thank you two for widening my understanding of this reading as well. Lots of me to think about. Perhaps even change what I intend to say on Sunday now. Perhaps I'll give the Ten Commandments a skip after all, and go on to Paul's letters to Corinthians. I used to love that story about the throwing down of the tables, because when I was very, very young, as a youngster, we used to have a young, what was classed as the young and trendy vicar, I guess, in 1960s, as much as they were ever trendy in the 1960s. And he introduced this club for the children in the parish called the Satellite Club, right? And it was based so much on schools, so there were kind of 4 houses, Mars, Jew, and all this. And if you went to church for 4 successive weeks and to the club for 4 successive weeks, you got given a Bible. And I've still got mine on the bookshelf, presented to David Boring for regular attendance at church and that, and it's lovely. But we used to have this Easter club every evening during Holy Week, Monday to Thursday, and we'd act out some of the stories. And if you go to the old ASB book, I think it was, and the days were themed, and this was always the story, the turning of the tables for Monday. And I used to love it because we used to throw ourselves over the rails of the church and stuff. It was good fun, and I'm sure he was despairing, but he never told us off. You know, he allowed us free expression in our acting out of the story.
Well, maybe you should just do that on Sunday, David. I'm sure everyone else would enjoy it too.
Yeah, good fun. Yeah, I'd probably be accused of
Stick a notice outside. Come to church and throw a table over.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, exactly. Just mind the coffee cups. That's all.
But don't
Lovely. Well, thank you both very, very much. And we'll be back. You know where to find us. You have found us. Thanks, Harry. I'm
afraid I won't be here next week, actually. Sorry.
Oh, you're away. Are you on a holiday?
I'm foraging. I'm just foraging for one day.
When are you going for the foraging?
To the very north of Cornwall. It's a Christmas present. So we're foraging under guidance so we don't kill ourselves. And then we're going to cook up whatever we forage. And then we're going to eat it. And
I did that once, Devon. I remember the Diocese put on a day, and it was in Holy Week, it was the Monday of Holy Week, I always remember. And I went to Motcombe.
Yeah, I do know.
Eve Pegley was the vicar of that area at the time. And we went to one of the farms, and the lady who owned the farm, first of all, got us to make soda bread. Then we had to go and forage for nettles to make soup and other things. And I didn't understand the thing I was doing, but it was very interesting. And the soup and the bread was very nice. I remember that for the day. You know, looking at the whole of creation as a useful tool if we know what we're doing with it.
Yeah, so that I'll see what I can learn. I'll tell you next time.
Yeah, you'll tell us which is dangerous.
Sorry?
Look forward to hearing about it.
Yeah. Well, if I live to tell the tale.
You will. Just enjoy it.
Enjoy
it. Good to see you anyway. We're not going to go. See you soon. Bye now.
Bye.